SK sir, can you please unmute your mic?
Yes, I have unmuted. I am just waiting for your
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
call. Should I start?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Priyanka, can I
Yes,
start now?
yes, sir, we can hear you.
You
You
should,
can start now.
yeah. Should I? Okay. Good evening. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the book launch of our latest poetry book, Wheel of Life, by Dr. Rama Gupta, inspired by Colonel Dharam Gupta, who is a lifelong partner and encourage her from behind. I would like to welcome Mr. Vivek Atre, retired IAS officer, who has kindly agreed to be the chief guest of the evening. Mr. Vivek Atre is a motivational speaker, columnist, and author himself. He has 8 TED Talks that is on technology, entertainment, and design. I would also like to welcome Mr. Srinivas Joshi, retired IAS and member of the Sahitya Academy. He is an established author and columnist who kindly consented to release the book today. He is associated with HimCon, that is Himachal Consultancy Organization, IIRD, that is the Institute for Integrated Rural Development, and he is also a resource person for the State Health and Family Welfare Training Institute of Himachal Pradesh. He is a regular contributor to a number of journals and newspapers, including the Tribune, Dainik Jagran, and also the All India Radio. I would also like to welcome our learned panelist, Dr. Rana Nair, Shri B.D. Kalia Hamdam, Dr. Kailash Aluwalia, Dr. Usha Bhande, and also our invitees who have joined us on the Zoom meet. Sterling Publishers publish one poetry book every year to encourage our authors. As you all know, publishing poetry is not a commercially viable venture because very few people in our country or anywhere in the world read poetry. Recently, we published this poetry book by Dr. Rama Gupta. Earlier, we had published her book titled Margaret Atwood, a psychoanalytical study. Whenever you meet our author Ramaji, you will find her in a smiling mood, which always makes you comfortable. It is a great quality indeed. She is a versatile personality and a poet. I especially like and which is in 2 parts and deals with finding oneself, which is not at all easy task. Rather, it is the most difficult task to find yourself. Dr. Rama Gupta is a writer and has made it a habit to write something every day, either a poem, a short story, or a passage. She retired as the principal of Government Girls College, Shimla. She has been associated with many educational and sports bodies from time to time. Now she keeps herself busy in various seminars, webinars, and literary gatherings. I look forward to listening some of the poems of Ramaji's this evening. I welcome you all again for this book launch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, before I request Mr. Srinivas Joshi, IAS, to unveil the book, I would like to introduce him first. Srinivas Joshi, IAS, retired as Special Secretary to the Government of Himachal Pradesh in 1994. He held important positions in various government departments and he was also Deputy Commissioner, Kangra, Himachal Pradesh. Presently, he is a freelance consultant to Hincon, Shimla, member of Technical Advisory Board of IIRD, Shimla, resource person for State Health and Family Welfare Training Institute. He has to his credit papers on status of sub-centers in Himachal Pradesh. He also have written books in Hindi and English. He is a regular contributor to various newspapers, TV, All India Radio, and columnist for Tribune and Dainik Jagran. Now I will request Mr. Srinivas Joshi ji to kindly unmute his mic and please unveil the book and give us a talk on the book. Thank you very much. Srinivas Joshi sir, can you please unmute your mic? Srinivas sir, can you please unmute your mic? Sir, I have allowed you to unmute your mic. Can you please unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
All right. This is the book. I'm releasing it now.
Yes, sir.
Released. I've not heard any bad. Okay. Okay. Now I have written a paper, small paper on poems written by Rama Gupta. And I have not taken all the poems, but only a few poems. Rama Gupta, Wordsworth-like attracts our attention towards natural beauty in her book, Wheel of Life, because we prefer not to see it ourselves. Unless one attracts our attention towards that beauty scattered everywhere. The world is too much with us. She sees beauty all around between the sky and the earth. Spotting shapes in clouds is a delightful way to pass time. But we have no time to stand and spare. So Rama gives vivid description of these shapes. Here lions I was watching. Their elephants appeared. Then like soldiers dressed in silvery robes, wide white caps, arrayed in marching order, an army moves. In the poem Michigan, the poet described the natural beauty of the river and its surroundings. Also gives a message to the one who has left home greener pastures. The river says, I have also left my source, but nourished the places along the shores. On my way, meet up the ocean. The poet, through these lines, repeated the words of Kathopanishad, Tishtata Jagrata, or what Vivekananda had said, arise awake and stop not till the goal is reached. The river stops not till ocean, and an example of person to remain till he reaches his goal after leaving home. Confessional poetry, confessionalism, is a style of poetry that emerged in the United States during the late 1950s and early 1960s. It is sometimes also classified as a form of postmodernism. We see this element in Rama's fetus killing. Here, a culprit confesses, I have stolen your birth, your name, your games. I have silenced your giggles, baby tears. I stifled your love, your marriage, your dreams, your plans for the future. It is out of the box style of delivering message in India. However, much it is like Sylvia Plath, the American poet, who says, "Daddy, I have had to kill you. You died before I had time." Her poem Grand Canyon was nostalgic for me because seeing the Colorado River from miles above, I also had the same feeling. Suddenly I glanced at the awe-inspiring gorge, stretching for miles, descending thousands miles to the river rapids, Colorado River. Another attraction for me in the Grand Canyon was the peaks, which are named as Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiv, besides Ram. I was searching for those in the poem Grand Canyon, written by an Indian, but could not find those. Growing old gracefully make people who have crossed 65 invigorating and enlivening. Instead of saying Vriddha Sharir Vyadhyon ka ghar or Angam Galitam Palitam Mundam Dashan Vihinam Jatam Tundam Vriddho Yati Gritva Dandam Tadapina Munchatyasha Pindam. A person's various limbs becomes decayed or weak. He or she becomes gray-haired or bald. Mouth becomes toothless. Walking without a stick is not possible. But still the greed and desire stay with him or her. Rama says, I do not want to find myself sighing and frightened with age. I do not want to find myself sighing and frightened. One can only live if one is intoxicated with life. Happiness does not come from external objects. A luxurious car, a big mansion, a handsome collection of clothes, etc. cannot make one happy. Happiness comes from within. We often talk about happiness as a goal, something to be attained like a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. The poet corrected himself after searching happiness everywhere and found that happiness is not the goal, but a part of journey. Oh, looking for everywhere. When it lay so close to me, it was within me. It was not the destination. It was the partner of my journey. Rama embarked upon the most difficult question in a person's life when she wanted to discover who am I. She tried to explain it in two parts. The truth is that we are a father because we have a son. We are a husband because we have a wife. A passenger because we are on a train. All our identities, everything we believe ourselves to be, are all dependent on something else. By not knowing the answer to the question, who am I, we keep on creating new identities of ourselves, consequently going farther away from our true self. All the suffering in life is because of not knowing our true identity. Until we realize our true self, we believe ourselves to be the names that have been given to us. And this is what the poet says. Among all goodies, I point out that Galileo was not Galileo. Dr. Rama Gupta, please listen to it. I point out that Galileo was not Galileo, but was Galileo Galilei, and that Rome was not his playground. He was born at Pisa, and Florence was his working place. Coming to the style of the poem, Rama in this poem has started with questions, but some could say a barrage of questions is no poetry. Why cannot a man set himself, be himself, think for himself? Can the study of truth do harm? Doesn't every true scientist seek to know the truth? Shall we dread the search for it? Rama asks these four questions in a row in her poem Galileo. But if winter comes, can spring be far behind? Is an oft-quoted question in P.B. Shelley's famous poem Ode to West Wind. Poetry is a very subjective thing. And when we pen it, there is no need to follow any list of do's and don'ts. It can be as simple as nursery rhyme or as tricky as John Donne's poetry, all choice depends on the poet. It is not necessary that one should follow grammatical constraints at poets' bellhooks. Shakespeare had said, to be or not to be is the question. And the question in poetry are, be Dr. Rama Gupta. Keep it up. Keep it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Srinivas sir, for giving your thoughts on the book. Now, I would like to call uh, author of the book, Dr. Rama Gupta, and before I would like to introduce her. Dr. Rama Gupta grew up in the remote village of Sunni in Himachal Pradesh. She is a former principal of Government Girls College, Shimla. She is MA in English with honors from Punjab University and M.Phil and PhD from Himachal University. Presently, she is a member of International Society of Karen Hone, USA Soka Gakkai International, Japan, and All India Women Association for Social Welfare and Citizen Council for Human Rights, Chandigarh. She has published her stories and poems in Women Era, Alive, Contemporary Vibes, Chandigarh. Poet Crit, Harigandha, and the Signalman Masho. She has also authored the book Margaret Atwood, a psychoanalytical study with New Dawn Press, and Mirror Image, a collection of short stories with Prabhat Prakashan. She is currently busy in writing the second volume of short stories and an anthology of poems. Now I request Dr. Rama Gupta to kindly unmute her mic and give her talk. Ma'am, yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Good evening. Today I want to share with you my journey of writing poetry. On my retirement, the apparent stability of my day-to-day life was unexpectedly interrupted. I went through a phase of insecurity, fear, and confusion. At that time, I visited my daughter in Sydney, and one day my son-in-law took me to Newcastle, one of the oldest industrial towns of Australia. There I saw Lake Macquarie joining the Pacific Ocean with its varied shades of blue. By the grace of the random chance, I was so captivated and mesmerized by the immensity of the ocean that it made me think of my impermanence, that I won't be able to visit it again. And at the same time, made me understand as well how fleeting, vacant, and self-embittering all of our angers, blames, and resentments are in the end. This dual awareness of our improbable life and our inevitable death is what allowed me to write my first poem, Newcastle, whose lines I read. Forgetting the existential dissatisfaction within, I could not help but be happy in such a happy company. For a moment forgot, in few years you would vanish. The ocean will be there, flowing forever with its deep blue colors, its white mass, new onlookers marveling, wondering at its immensity, its new playfulness. That very day, I decided, I vowed to animate my life, remaining life, with love and beauty, with poems and stories, hence the genesis of my first poem, Newcastle. From that time onward, life beckoned me instead to do something meaningful and leave something of sweetness and substance in the world. Therefore, I devoted my time to read Whitman, Eliot, Yeats, Rilke, Sylvia Plath, Jane Kenyon, Emily Dickinson, Wisława, Pablo Neruda, Andrew Rich, Mark Strand, Jane Hirschfield, Dirk Walcott, William Blake, Liesl Muller, Mary Oliver, Rabindranath Tagore, and the romantic poets of 19th century, especially John Keats. To tell you the truth, I simply fell in love with poetry. That there were many hardships of writing poems in rhyme and rhythm. Therefore, I chose free verse. As the name free verse implies, that this kind of poetry rose out of the desire for release from the restraints of meter or the measured line and strict rhythmical patterns. Free verse is not, of course, free, but it's free from formal metrical designs. But it certainly is not free from some kind of design. Isn't poetry, they call something spontaneous? Yes, it is. Its language is also composed, considered, appropriate, and effective. From that time onward, poetry inclined me towards the whispers of my heart, discover the universal truths, follow its dictates, and it released my human need to hate, to harbor divisions and the enticement of revenge. In fact, it released all my bitterness and hold only love, only peace in my heart. I wrote spontaneously whatever fascinated me at that time. Maybe nature, song of the Michigan River, the playfulness of the clouds, as Mr. Joshi read it, the beauty of the night on Australian beaches, the grandeur of the Grand Canyon, as Mr. Joshi described, and its shifting colors, reminiscent of its creator, the walks along the Fifth Avenue, conversation with tulips, and what Devda trees or Shimla hills do for human spirit. I also wrote about love in digital world, breakups, conflicted relationship, and my other poems moved to the spiritual and religious aspects of a devotee. I also touched on the perennial question of who I am, as Mr. Ghai remarked, and Mr. Joshi also said that I made it too rhetorical. Okay, in short, poetry helped me to live life at its pace, to suffer what was there to suffer, and enjoy what was there to enjoy, and regard both sufferings and joys as facts of life. Above all, it helped me to navigate through my losses and pains. As you know, poetry is only mode of remembrance that gives shape and space to the largeness of feelings, especially the grief. In the end, I would like to read few stanzas from the poem Breakup, after the breakup. You know, and you have seen every day breakups have become very common. The people have no place and persons to go, neither their parents nor their friends, because they themselves are either divorced or going through a bad phase. Hence, the narrator of the poem says, I read the poem. I ran to the woods. After the breakup, I ran to the woods. I did not make rows. I did not say all sorts of unpleasant things that mentally tears you to pieces. I kept walking with my exquisite pain, reached the thick woods. I hugged the tree. It asked with the eyes of silence more than with the lips, isn't it strange that you utter the first thing that has been bothering you when you find a patient listener in another. I also blurted out, unconditional love does not seem to exist anywhere in the world in which I am born. No one sits these days gazing, sighing, saying sweet nothings. Yes, but breakups are very common. Yes, the lovers come, and in my poem also, he sat looking at me, neither horribly awkward nor unbearably miserable, nor heavy hearts, nor embarrassed eyes, no agonizing, strange soul, revolting silence. Straight he said, I am not deceiving you, not concealing from you. Love is not crime. I have fallen in love. No will can struggle against it. You are also free to give yourself happiness. After all, I am not the first and won't be the last. Perfect freedom, he said, is the essential condition of love. And he left in a jiffy. How happy are those who can take a load off their conscience like that? If love returned resembles not the love given, it is difficult to forego the disappointments that follow. To struggle against this love is beyond my power. That time the tree said, you have told me your despair. I will tell you mine. Have you ever seen stripped and bare woods? Their leaves and flowers once beautiful, then their petals blown, withered and rot, go to the earth that gave birth to them all? Have you ever heard any tree lamenting the loss of season and its passions? Why, to the human heart of the man is so difficult to go with the drift of things, bow and accept the end of love as the end of the season. I listened in silence to this tree and returned home. Thereafter, no more attempts at vulnerability, powerlessness, and exquisite pain. This is the end of the poem. Now, I would like to thank all of you for giving me such a patient listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Now I'm extremely honored to invite our chief guest, uh, Vivek Atre, IAS. But before I would like to call him, I would like to introduce him first. Mr. Vivek Atre, ex-IAS, is a motivational speaker, author, mentor, advisor, columnist, and visiting professor. He resigned from the Indian Administrative Service (IAS) in 2017. He has 8 TED Talks and 5 Josh Talks. Over 4 million people have viewed his videos on YouTube. He is the founder of Suvichar Think Tank, visiting professor and chair of the Yogananda Center for Technology at Shulini University. He is also a founder of the Vibrant Networking Forum, Playwright Foundation, Chandigarh Literary Society, and co-convener of Intact Chandigarh. He is a member of Governor Advisory Council for Chandigarh. He has inspired thousands of youngsters to adopt a cheerful, positive, and multidimensional approach to their lives. Vivek Atre is an acclaimed orator and has spoken in India and abroad at events of Horasis, NASCOM, CII, TIE, NCGG, LBS, NAA, IIFT, ISB, universities, colleges, schools, and private companies. His novels are Move On Bunny and Dubeji Bounces Back. He writes a fortnightly columns, Random Forays, for the for the Hindustan Times. His new books are It's Wonderful Life and Finding Success Within. As Director IT and Tourism, he was the man behind Chandigarh IT Park. He spearheadedly uh, um, he spearheaded the award-winning Sampark project. He was quoted by New York Times and the Observer of UK during this period. As DC Panchkula, he initiated projects such as Adar Samman. It is basically for the respect to elderly. He is an electronic engineer from NIT Kurukshetra. He has a diploma in French. His favorite book is The Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. Now, I would like to call Mr. Vivek Atreji to kindly unmute his mic and share his views with us. Thank you. To your mic.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to unmute. I was trying to stop you in the middle of my introduction, but you were reading so quickly and carefully that I couldn't stop you. Thank you very much for the warm welcome and a warm congratulations to Dr. Rama Gupta. I am indeed grateful that you have invited me as a guest for this program. I have already unveiled the book that you sent me and it is here and I'm very happy to pose with it for you. And it's a wonderful collection of poetry. I have been through it. I have been through your profile, ma'am. And let me tell you two things which make me even more happy. Of course, I've also received these flowers. Thank you very much. And I can make everybody jealous by showing off these flowers. So it's just a very happy occasion. One thing I'd like to say is my mother was also Rama. And it is a wonderful name, Rama. And it probably means the goddess Lakshmi, as far as I know. And it is a Hindu, very deep-rooted name. Secondly, I am extremely happy because you are from Shimla and my wife is also from Shimla. She was, in fact, her father lived there for many years and worked in the HPSCB and they settled in Panchkula now. Very nice to meet you, ma'am. And also to meet everybody else. I know some of the friends who are on this call and my greetings to all of them. I can see Mr. B.T. Kalia Hamdam, whose name is showing as Milind Bharadwaj for some reason, but that is probably his family member. And I can see Mr. Srinivas Joshi, who is a former IAS officer like me, IAS retired, and he spoke wonderfully well, sir. You spoke very well, and I was very happy to hear you speak. And Dr. Rama Gupta, your poetry and the way you spoke about it, it flows from the heart. And that is the best part about your writing, that you have no filters. Whatever you have seen, whatever your poetic mind and heart and soul have gathered, you have reproduced in the wheel of life, and that is my heart. When you write from the heart, then it is received from the heart by the reader. There is no filtration in that process. I really like the poetry which is this, travels about the birds, the sunsets, spring. He mentioned the Grand Canyon. I really like the title, the Sanctum Sanctorum, and perhaps connecting to the soul. Somebody who's connecting to the soul, who can really find out why somebody is leaving maybe in midstream and how to send prayers and wishes to them. It is something very deep rooted, and human beings cannot really understand this wheel of life, this journey of life, without comprehending it through intuition. And intuition comes from meditation, deep meditation. It cannot come from reading books. And those who don't even read books, unfortunately, a lot of people in the world today are so busy that they spend more time on Instagram than on books. And Instagram doesn't have too much literature, I'm afraid. It has a lot of pictures. But I must say that reading books is still the key. However, even important, more important is meditation, finding joy within if you can. And that is why my favorite book is Autobiography of a Yogi, which has taught me to meditate and the bigger picture of the life. I would not give a long speech because I have a deadline to go. I have to interview Mr. Dilip Vengsarkar, former cricketer, soon. And it's a wonderful opportunity, however, for me to be in your midst. And I look forward to meeting you in person when things are better. And once again, a warm word of congratulations for Wheel of Life. I'm so happy to have read it and gone through it, and so happy to have met you all. Once again, my wishes and congratulations to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for taking out time, and we are thankful to you that you give your thoughts on the book. So thank you very much. So now, before I request our panelist, Professor Nair, to share his views, I would first like to introduce him. Professor Rana Nair is a translator of poetry and short fiction from Punjabi to English. He has more than 40 volumes of poetry and translation works to his credit. He is a theater artist, activist, and has also participated in a number of major full-length productions and has retired as a professor from Department of English and Cultural Studies, Punjab University, Chandigarh. Professor Rana Nair, sir, can you please unmute yourself?
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Thank you very much.
Good evening, friends. Good evening, Ghai Saab. We are actually meeting each other or seeing each other after a long time. Congratulations, Ramaji. It's your second book, and I'm really fortunate. I was part of your first book release, and I am very happy that I'm part of your second book release as well. I will just say a few words about the kind of poetry Ramaji writes. I don't think I need to start with a statement which is almost obvious to everyone, that she's an extremely talented and creative person. And generally we use an expression, late bloomers. I think it does apply to her because she started writing short stories. She discovered creativity after retirement. I think it's a phase in one's life when one loves to do what one has been putting on hold for a long time. So Ramaji returned to creativity in her post-retirement phase. She started off by writing a collection of short stories, which I had the honor to introduce to a different audience. Of course, at that point of time, things were much better, so it was a live audience. But this time it happens to be a Zoom meeting. But such is the nature of things. If I have to speak about the kind of voice it is, I would say that Ramaji's voice is very confident, very cheerful. She has a kind of a poetic self which is all inclusive. Srinivas Joshi ji made a very interesting observation saying that poetry is subjective. I don't know. All poetry, all creativity is subjective, but I think it acquires some kind of an appeal for us only if it has something to say to us. And if it has to say something to us, then I think it has to acquire some semblance of objectivity. Ramaji's poetic self is fairly expansive, as all of you can see. She has this ability to go down the memory lane, recall some of the incidents from her childhood, from her youth, varied experiences that she's had. She also talks about sights and sounds that she has experienced as a traveler. She talks about her visits to different countries. She has a very minute observation, which I think is a great quality for any poet. She not only looks at life very closely and minutely, but I think she also has this ability to meditate on a wide range of ideas that life throws across to her. So as a result, her range is truly eclectic because she has written on love, she has written on breakup, she has written on Great Canyon, she has written on lakes, ponds, trees, and she's also written on nature, on ecology, on happiness, on suffering, on existence, on life, and also death. So that is why I think the title that she has chosen for this particular collection is very appropriate because it's all encompassing. Though the book is slim, but it offers you a whole range of ideas and thoughts which one can possibly entertain in a lifetime. And sometimes late bloomers, I called her a late bloomer, but late bloomers have an advantage, if I may say so. And the advantage is that their emotions acquire a sense of intensity. Their feelings are not raw, and their observations are very, very incisive. And I think all of it is to be found in Ramaji's poetry. I could go on and on talking about it, but I think since the time is limited, I'm going to wind up by reading one poem. Of course, there are several poems which I loved reading, but there is one poem which is very close to my heart. So I'll wind up by reading that poem. And the poem is Growing Old Gracefully. Who does not want to live long? I long to be 80, even if my back is doubly bent and my shirt hangs on my shoulder and pantaloons loose, slipping on the waist like a feeble hold on life. I do not want to find myself sighing and frightened. One can only live if one is intoxicated with life. All I want is to be a cherry old man who takes childlike delight in finding something in his garden, picking his own berries in harsh summer or carrying home apples in gusty autumn evening, stopping by to talk to people in unself-conscious manner, being too happy in their happiness, enjoying the evening of life, picking bird-like is living. Truly, I know the greatest gift of old age is its cheerfulness. It is more than 1,000 sacraments, better than the prayer, only I'm learning to live without any apologies for my existence. It is an art one learns while living hours upon hours of deliberate practice. This is what I call chiseled wisdom of old age. And this is exactly what runs through the entire gamut of her poems. Congratulations, Ramaji, on bringing out such a fine collection. And I'm sure readers, when they get to read your poems, would enjoy them as much as you enjoyed writing them and as much as I enjoyed reciting at least one of your poems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for sharing your views with us. Uh, Now, I would like to call uh, Dr. Usha Bandeji, but before, I would like to introduce her. Dr. Usha Bande was a fellow Indian Institute of Advanced Study, Shimla, and also visiting professor at Vishwa Bharati University, Shanti Niketan, West Bengal. Basically from Himachal Pradesh Education Service, she was on the faculty of English Literature in Government College for Women, Shimla. She retired as principal from Government College, Arki, District Solan, Himachal Pradesh. After finishing her fellowship at the IIAS, she was associated with the Institute of Integrated Himalayan Study, Himachal Pradesh University, where she worked on four major projects, one of which was a coffee table book on the forts and places of Himachal Pradesh. She, was a she has a number of books and a considerable number of research papers to her credit. Along with academic writing, Dr. Usha Bande is fond of journalist writing and creative writing and has contributed extensively to magazines and newspapers. With 35 plus years of experience, besides research, conducting workshops, and acting as resource person for various universities, she has been actively busy in imparting soft skills lectures at various training and educational institutions and corporate offices nationwide as well. Now, I would request Dr. Usha Bandeji for sharing her views.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. Thank you so much, the organizers, and especially Rama Gupta and Colonel Gupta for making me a part of this program. I feel happy to speak on this book, Wheel of Life. And before that, I would like to say a few words on the personal note. My association, our association rather, has been very long. We still remember the time when both of us were sitting at a rickety bench waiting for our interview. Both of us were selected, and then followed a long life of academic life, of various transfers, posting, academic advancement, PhD, M.Phil, PhD, etc., then promotion. All through, I found Rama a very cheerful person, as all the speakers have also mentioned, and Mr. Ghai has mentioned right in the beginning. But on this veneer, outer veneer of being a very happy-go-lucky type of a person, I felt that she has got deep sensibility, and I discovered it at a time when I read one of her pieces, The Empty Nest Syndrome. And after that, I felt, yes, she must write. She must not just spend her potential without doing anything. And she has really proved me right. Thank you so much, Rama. Okay, this Wheel of Life is a seemingly very thin volume of 56 poems of varying lengths on a variety of themes. But the common thread running through almost all the poems is search for meaning of life, the inevitability of death, and the persona's Sisyphean efforts to face life boldly. The title, Wheel of Life, I must focus on the title also, is not movement ahead, but it is in circle like a whirligig. that makes it essentially a book of loss, dreams, death, mortification, journeys, memories, and the happy moments of life. You cannot forget them. All these themes are woven amazingly well structured verses that speak of a poet who has seen and experienced the wheel of life going in cycles: pain, agony, panic, joy, paradoxes, perplexities, and so on. Sorrow seems to lurk in the corners of our lives. It's for everybody, even though it diminishes over time. Yet there are apprehension, fears, and disenchantment. Human beings are prone to search meaning for life, and that's why the question ko hum and the reply so hum. But anyway, I would many all the speakers before me, they also refer to the last two poems. Who am I? This is in part two. I start with the last poem. And, uh, well, paying attention to the inner state and contemplating her inner nature, she upbraids herself in the poem. What stops me, she says, from discovering, understanding, and finding myself? This is a great question for her. And then she answers it. However, a number of questions still assail her. Still, she hears her inner voice that admonishes her. I quote, just as you can create your own prison, you can set yourself free too. And that is a very important thing, setting herself free. This is what Rama has also said when she addressed the gathering here. And here comes the moment when she decides to grapple with the self. This primordial question is ultimately the foundation of all knowledge and experience. Well, so the question, who am I, is not answered, but the answer is there, but the search is there. I started with the last two poems. And going back to the first poem, it is written from the perspective of a soldier. And Rama, of course, Colonel Gupta being in the army, Rama knows the very inner feelings of a soldier. This poem is a poem of loneliness and loss, of expectation, and a soldier's existence. In a spiritual speaker, again, there is the unending quest for Buddha land, which is not outside you, but it is a journey within, hard and slippery. Apart from poems about spiritual longing and the incomprehensibility of reality, there are poems depicting mundane problems and fears, uncertainties that haunt her: husband sickness, aging parents, the urge for life vis-a-vis, the awareness of slipping years, and the uncanny task of carrying the burden of others at the cost of one's ease and pleasure. I am not a saint, she says poignantly. I like the poem. It captures the way responsibilities grip us. The impact of fatigue and boredom is evoked in the beginning. She cries out that she wants to shake off all responsibilities, but she knows it cannot be shaken off. The great task of carrying life forward must continue. The poem succinctly suggests that there is no escape from responsibilities. Wherever I went, her world came after. I could see her blue veined hands, wrinkled face, pleading eyes. I'll just two paragraphs more and I'll be finishing. The agony of watching death is graphically expressed in I never thought her memories would hurt me. This is a poem I liked a lot. This agonizingly touching poem recounts the fading of life. The gaunt, courageous woman may be the persona's mother, who was, I quote, unyielding to pain and suffering, goes slowly into the abyss of death. At 94, body sagging, loss of strength, loss of vitality, loss of memory, and Alzheimer's. The persona's agony is real, unrelenting as she writes. I quote again two very touching lines. Her stonier eyes, fixed in their rocky sockets, chill me to death. Look at the choice of words. And the words, immediately, they're very graphic. Now, despite her deep probe and questioning conscience, Rama Gupta has the knack of enjoying the beauty of the world. She is mesmerized by the ocean, forgetting all the existential dissatisfaction within. I could not help but be happy in such a happy company. A la William Wordsworth, a poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. Then there is a walk in the snow. This is invigorating. River, Canon of California are some of her nature poems, in which nature leads her to reflect on life's unknown parts. She ends her poem, Grand Canon, with a telling line: the music of silence echoes in my being, not stilled even by the chilly fears of the unknown. Experience of life and normal daily activities like walk by a lake, walk with a grandchild, and then there are the social problems, then the visits to hot springs at Tattapani, Dwarka. Now these poems, they take us away from that spiritual urge and show us the very beauty of daily living also. The recounting motive is death in various shade in these poems. But still, she says one poem is Do Not Worry About Death, where the persona is ready to surrender herself to death in whatever form it comes. And so I would like to say that the journey motive, old age, aging, also recur in many of the poems. The journey metaphor present the poet away from home, having new encounters that travel affords, pausing in solitude, but never far from the memories that travel with her in Dwarka. Maybe it may be in Dwarka or Tatapani or abroad. In a way, the verses deceptively turn the familiar into unfamiliar. They may not state anything new, but by creating discourse that these poems prepare us to face the existing present and look optimistically to future. That is what Rama is, optimistic as ever. Thank you, Rama, for affording me this opportunity, and thank you, everybody. It has been a great experience for me, so I close with it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Usha Bande ma'am, for sharing your views with us. Now, continuing the process, I would like to call Dr. B.D. Kalia now, but before I would like to introduce him. Sri B.D. Kalia Handam had his education from Amritsar and Jalandhar. He joined the service in 1959, and during that period, he did his post-graduation in Hindi at 52 years of age. Being a science student, still developed interest in literature from school time itself. It is his love for literature that he started reading books by renowned authors like Shakespeare, John Keats, and others. In 1974, he met his mentor, Dr. Zar Almi, a famous poet who guided him in writing poetry and paradoxy. He has written a number of poetical synopses at national and international level. He is the founder, president of Ehsas Adabi Society, registered under Panchkula. Under the banner of this society, he has been organizing various workshops and seminars. He is widely traveled and has published a travelogue. For his service to the society, he has been honored with a Hali Award by Haryana government this year and the Sahitya Academy Award. Now I would like to request Mr. B.D. Kalia ji to unmute himself. Can I, B.D. Kalia sir, can you please let me know your Zoom ID? And can you please unmute yourself? Sir, I have given you permission to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Give me 1 minute.
I'm here at your disposal. Thank you very much for really having the opportunity of sharing a very big event, the release of the book of Dr. Rama Gupta today. I would invite the sense of smell of all the dignitaries to feel the fragrance of this book. My title of the book, Fragrance of the Poetry Book, Wheel of Life by Dr. Rama Gupta. I feel immense pleasure in joining the galaxy of distinguished personalities of English literature on the online release of the book, Wheel of Life, a bouquet of poems in English authored by Dr. Rama Gupta, a poet, a short story writer. I am reminded of my first literary meeting with the couple, Dr. Rama Gupta and her husband, Dr. Colonel D.P. Gupta at Shimla. They are my neighbors at Panchkula, residing at a distance of few yards. But we met very casually only 2-3 times. However, I invited them to a mushara at Getty Theatre, Shimla, organized by the Himachal government, wherein I was invited as poet. They came and joined the mushara, and afterwards they requested me to stay with them in their Bangalore at Shimla. I stayed with them for 2 days. And during this period, Dr. Rama Gupta recited her poems and shared her short stories and had a lot of discussion on literary pursuits. I felt Dr. Rama Gupta had no interaction with the literary personalities at that time to share her creativity and lacked proper exposure to judge the quality of her poems and short stories. I analytically expressed my views on the poems, the short stories. They were extremely impressed and requested me to guide Dr. Rama Gupta in her creative ventures as mentor. And since then, I am discharging my duties to guide her in short stories as well as composition of poems. Dr. Rama Gupta is a talented person and came out with a book of short stories titled Mirror Image, which has been appreciated by one and all. This was enough to boost her confidence, and she marched down her literary journey with great zest and zeal. Dear friends, now she is gifting you another opportunity to share her views and vision in her poetry and the book Wheel of Life. She has rare quality of transforming every scene, every event, complexities, observations, vision, witnessed and projected in most suitable words in her own style. She is a good weaver of thought and situations. Time is not far off when she will find an honorable place in the galaxy of renowned, established popular authors. I congratulate her on the publication of her poetry book, Wheel of Life, and with her and wish her a bright future in her creative ventures. Let us have a glance at her few poems to quench our literary thirst and satisfy our literary palate. Dr. Rama has beautifully picturized the benevolent nature, landscapes, rivers, mountains, clouds, lakes, sights in her poems. She appears to be a talented observer of nature's bounty and sights and has the art of weaving them in most appropriate words. Expression is effortless and enjoyable, full of soothing effect. She dares the problems and complexities of life. Her psychological and analytical approach to face and deal with the problem is convincing. She wants to be as close to the nature as possible. She wants to have freedom in life. She feels man is born free and should enjoy freedom throughout his life. In the poem Live in Relationship, she pleads for the freedom of both partners without burden and pressure on either of the partners. In the poem's Prayer, Who Am I? Part 1 and 2, I ask myself, the poet is mystical like Carl Jung, a psychologist. She is not afraid of death, mortality. She prefers to live happily in the world like a flower lily, though for a short while. She is a visionary. Here she knows soul is immortal. After death, new life in rebirth is bestowed. Here is my verse to depict this idea in Urdu. Ruh badle ki hamdam naya पैरहन रूह बदले कि हमदम नया आवरण मौत से फिर मिलेगी नई जिंदगी. So there will be this circle, this wheel will go on. It will never stop. In the poem Who Am I? The poet witnesses a conflict between body and soul. There is a curtain in between the two, which is an impenetrable barrier which does not allow her to address her soul. She is in search of the solution, and during the process, she feels the existence of superpower, the God. The poet daily witnesses the presence of the superpower through his manifestations, although she doesn't have the vision to see the superpower in reality. God, face to face. Here she submits, surrenders. Here she submits, surrenders before the superpower to seek peace, solace, salvation, and immortality as she sets herself free of all problems, suffering, and bondages of life. Let us have a look at the following lines of the poem Who Am I? Part 2. When would I get the strength to say, make it stop, I can bear no more? Just then, there is still somewhere deep within me an infinitesimally small part faintly murmurs, just as you can create your prison. Just As you can create your prison, you can set yourself free too. You do not have forever, therefore why wait? Become a faithful and intimate companion to that formidable stranger you call yourself. For companionship, two bodies, one soul. Here is a couplet by Hamdam to close the session of this talk. कतरे कतरे में नजर आए का सागर का वजूद, कतरे कतरे में नजर आएगा सागर का वजूद, दिल के सागर में वो जब खुद से जुदा हो जाएगा. The drop will be ocean only when it loses its identity as drop. Once again, my congratulations and blessings to Dr. Rama Gupta on the publication and release of her beautiful poetry book, Wheel of Life. Cheers and cheers for Dr. Rama Gupta. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for taking out time and give your talk. So now I would like to introduce Dr. Kailash Ahluwalia. Dr. Kailash Ahluwalia, Chandigarh-based Bengal poet, short story writer, literary critic, and theatre person, has taught English to graduate and postgraduate classes in various colleges. He has a number of books to his credit. He is Sahitya Academy awardee. He has been contributing articles and writing book reviews in various literary journals of the country. His poetry and short stories are included in a number of media journals in India. He has widely traveled to Canada, USA, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi. Dr. Kailash Ahluwalia, can you please unmute yourself, and can you please message me from your ID so that I can unmute you? Sir, can you please send me message from your Zoom ID? Dr. Kailash Ahluwalia, sir. I think due to some busy schedule, he has not joined us today, but so now I would like to proceed to the next step. So now I would like to call now I would like to call Aniket Gupta to kindly give vote of thanks. Aniket Gupta is grandson of Dr. Rama Gupta and university student in Sydney, Australia. Thank you very much. Aniket, can you please unmute yourself?
Hey, hi everyone. So on behalf of my Nani, yeah, can you hear me?
Just give me a second. Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you very much.
All right, cool. So on behalf of my Nani, Dr. Rama Gupta, my Nanu, Colonel D.P. Gupta, and SK Gai, I would like to say a massive thank you to Vivek Atre and Srinivas Joshi for taking the time to attend this event. I also just want to say a big thank you to Dr. Rana Nair, B.D. Kalia, and Dr. Usha Bande for their valuable talks. Thank you also to Priya Jha for your efforts in the launch of the book. We really appreciate it. And I would also like to say thank you so much to Sterling Publishers, who made all the arrangements for this event. And my special thanks go to the journalists in particular who attended the launch to cover the proceedings. And finally, thank you to the audience for your presence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you very much.